Morning, everyone, and we are very happy to be here today. We were hoping to be able to meet everyone, but as the situation is, at least we have this virtual opportunity to meet each other. I will start by saying that today's presentation is both a presentation and an invitation, because the activities that we will present are ongoing activities, and we have always reached out and we have continuously actually worked with different researchers, but also with people working in different schools in Malta, and we are trying to engage with them in different on different dimensions. So it's both an invitation to to share your opinions on our research, but also an invitation to engage with us if you are interested in the type of activities we are doing, and let's say take a more active role in what we are going to present today. So yes, the presentation deals with societal polarization in Maltese schools, and we are going to I am going to just share some ideas on how we ended up carrying out this research, and then present some of the I am not going to say solutions, because they are not really solutions to the problems we have identified, but mostly things that we have experimented with and things that we think are tools that might help educators in dealing with some of the problems. As for the context in Malta, I mean, when we're discussing things like societal polarization or even radicalization, it doesn't seem to be a topic that is of great, that is greatly debated, let's say. It would seem that this is something that there's very little research being done and very little societal awareness to a certain extent. But before COVID-19 ruled the headlines, we did have actually some examples of situations that might indicate that while perhaps it's not a topic of academic focus so much, it is a topic of interest, and it does connect to some things that are really occurring. So here I just copied some of the headlines from the last year, where we can see that at least to a certain extent, there is mention of racism or racist social media content, hate speech problems, cases of racially or other motivated violent incidents, and also cases when people are being on trial for race-related crimes. This would indicate that, at least to a certain extent, there seems to be an underlying problem that would deserve more attention. And starting from this topic, we've grouped with partners that are coming from different countries, such as Spain and Italy, Romania, and we have started putting together a European project that eventually got funded, where we were looking at cases of societal polarization and radicalization in young people. And when I'm saying in children and young people, which means that we were looking at an age group of 10 to 18-year-olds. And we were trying to understand what are the causes for which young people might be attracted to these more radical ideas, and also what could be potential solutions for strengthening their resilience and for empowering, let's say, the silent majority, so the majority which does not embrace such ideas and can act as a safeguard for the community. And obviously, when we started carrying out this research, we first started looking at the problem. And we did that in all of the countries. But obviously today, for this presentation, I'm just going to focus on the findings from Malta. I will not speak about, I will really not tackle the cross-nation, let's say, comparison that we also did in the project. And what we discovered is that we do encounter a case of highly polarized society with to some issues. And while I'm going to go into the theoretical groundings of this, just to have a small refresher, what is societal polarization? It's when individuals identify themselves as part of the groups, and then these groups cluster around very distant poles, and they continue to become more and more distant, and then there's less and less dialogue and cooperation, social tensions appear, and eventually this can also lead to violence. And I'm just going to give a small example of societal polarization. For example, the rescue of migrants at sea is one topic that has polarized Maltese society. Some people think that is a duty to rescue people who are found on dinghies. There are others who think, no, this is not sustainable for a country such as Malta. Another example of a highly polarized topic of debate is, for example, abortion, where you can see some people arguing in for and some people arguing against. So these are just really examples of topics that can really polarize a society, and where people are less inclined to dialogue and more inclined to just embrace a certain point of view at one or the other end of the spectrum. And moving from that to, so the final, let's say, stages of societal polarization is when people become radicalized. Now, it's very important, and I cannot stress it enough, how important it is to remind everyone that radicalized does not mean terrorist. Radicalized individuals are just individuals who have radical ideas, and it doesn't mean that they will act upon those ideas or carry out any violent actions. So here it's very important to and it's not even a crime according to European law. So, however, it is problematic. I think somebody has a microphone open. Okay, thank you. So it is very problematic because eventually some of these radicalized individuals would in the end up carrying out, as I said, violent activities. And therefore, it is very important, it was very important in our research to try to understand what are the elements that make individuals, and as I said, especially children and young people, vulnerable to radicalization, and how can this be prevented. And in order to achieve this, we have decided to engage with what we call first-line practitioners. What do I mean by that? We literally went and spoke to everybody who in one capacity or another works with children and young people. So we did speak with a lot of educators, but also with social workers, youth workers, judges who judge cases related to minors, law enforcement, researchers, children psychologists, NGOs which work with children. So we try to cover the full spectrum of professionals who do work with children and young people to try to understand what is their awareness of the problem, are they prepared to deal with cases of children who are highly polarized or even radicalized, and what do they see as potential solutions. And for this, we carried out quite a large number of interviews, and my colleague Julia was directly responsible for organizing those interviews, and we did several focus groups in Malta to further discuss some of the issues that were raised during the interviews. So what were let's say, the main conclusions? One was that there was a consensus that radicalization is not perceived as a problem in Malta. So irrespective of these incidents, they were considered isolated incidents, and irrespective of the problems that and the examples actually that some practitioners gave us, they all believe that it is not perceived as a problem, and hence there are no measures or no systems or procedures put in place in order to address it. They all refer to the problem of migration, and especially of integrating migrant children, as a key problem related to this, because they felt that that's, as I said, a polarized topic, that they are not prepared to deal with it, and it does have the potential to radicalize people. And when they said that, they did not necessarily mean radicalize the migrant children, but radicalize Maltese against the migrant children. Giving examples that they gave of, let's say, actions that worry them were people who did not want to send children to schools where other migrant children attended, or wanted to withdraw their children from classes where there was a majority of migrant children, or hate speech that they heard being repeated in schools, for example, but also in other instances, against this group. On the other hand, there were also cases of radicalization, let's say, in families of migrant children that they were not able to detect. So they were not aware, actually, that the parents of some of the children were embracing a more radical view of things, and that caused different problems. So the first, let's say, example that they gave was obviously this right-wing polarization, and then immediately they also referred to Islamic extremism, because obviously with the potential of more children arriving to Malta, coming from different cultures, and with very little knowledge of what would what would be the signs, let's say, of an Islamic extremist ideology, they were afraid that such ideas would spread also in reaction to the hate speech. So it was more of a cause and reaction leading to a vicious circle. And also another point on which everybody reached really agreement was the fact that they felt unprepared to deal with this topic. They felt they don't have enough knowledge to recognize the signs, they don't know how to take it forward, and there are no official policies to tackle radicalization. So while everybody, for example, acknowledged the need for intra and interagency cooperation, there was no policy in place, so they felt that it is everything that is being done in every let's say that there are instances when actually different practitioners cooperate. It was all done informally, and there wasn't a formal structure. And this was obviously very worrisome for the practitioners. Well, we also asked them what do they feel were the main drivers of polarization and radicalization in Malta, but also in general. And it was very interesting to see that what they pointed out mostly was obviously, I mean, there are many factors listed here, but the two main factors that they saw, or three, let's say, were the family environment and the upbringing. So they felt that children who were embracing such radical ideas had heard them or were acquainted with them in their family environment from their own parents. In later years, so obviously this depends on the age group, in older children or it was also an important role was also played by the peer network and peer pressure, and but then they also refer to the socioeconomic situation, the marginalization and the desire to belong, which was mostly in relation to the migrant children, and the lack of a sense of identity. So the difficulty of integrating or of merging culture and values received at home from families who come from one tradition, and then culture and values expressed, for example, in school, which would be in accordance with what is embraced in the Maltese society. And starting from this information that we received, and starting from this consultation with stakeholders, we then try to develop, as I said, a set of tools that we are now, so we have developed them now, and we are still, we are still in the process of structured dialogue, so we are still doing some consultations to basically validate these tools with the same practitioners that we involved in the initial stage, and then we will start moving on to a training phase when we want to, take this to the people who need to use them and show them how exactly they aim to be used. And as I explained, this was part of a project, and the project aimed to increase the resilience of young people, to increase the awareness and capacity of these first-line practitioners, and then share best practices across Europe. Because obviously the situation that we found in Malta is not the same situation that we found, for example, in Italy and Spain, where because there were more cases and more, these problems have actually occurred for a longer period of time, they are already, these practitioners would have already undergone a lot of training and there are procedures in place. But there are other problems there that makes the situation difficult. So there are lessons that Malta can actually learn from the experience of other countries who are more advanced in this process. And the main, so the name that we gave to our set of tools are experimental labs. Why do we call them experimental labs? Because we actually took different types of activities from different disciplines, and we grouped them together in a way as to make them suitable for a younger age group and to help children and young people develop some critical skills. And I will present in more details what those skills are. Which skills enable them, as I explained, to become more resilient. So the idea is not to tackle people who are already radicalized necessarily, but to prevent them for becoming polarized and helping them cope better with such situations, such ideas, and helping them to respond better when faced with such a situation. And why schools and teachers? It was very interesting to note that what all practitioners agreed on was also the fact that because it is very much related to the family environment and because it is related to the peer group, schools can actually play a very important role in assisting children and young people by providing an alternative and a safe space where they can explore their emotions, where they can learn critical skills. And on one hand, I think the educators that we interviewed felt that it's too much of a burden, as in there's a lot of responsibility placed on them to handle such a sensitive issue. But on the other hand, they did agree that as the causes are mostly to be found in the family group or in the peer group, then the school actually has a privilege, it can offer a privileged space where these skills can be learned and ideas can be challenged. And just to explain where our, let's say, tools fall into, as I said, they are not curative measures. So on this scale, you can see that on the top part, they are measures that need to be taken once something has occurred, while at level 0, those are measures that are general measures that are taken. So those are just general, let's say, guidelines for the society. So our labs fall somewhere at level 2. So they are general prevention measures, so they do not need, so these exercises are not designed just for the vulnerable children. They are designed for everybody. Hence my earlier comment on empowering the silent majority. All children should have these skills because they can act together. And it's important to increase everybody's resilience. So these are not measures targeting those who are mostly at risk, but it's measures targeting the general school population, exactly to prevent a problem from occurring. So they fall into the, let's say, the prevention spectrum. And here is the structure of the experimental labs. As you see, they are divided in 3 different pillars. One, you have individual capacity building labs. These are aimed to develop individual skills. So these are exercises which can be done by educators or social workers or with your youth workers, NGO psychologists, and obviously exercises for different kind of practitioners, which then assist the children to develop their skills. And you have coaching and parenting, critical thinking, anger management. So these are, let's say, 3 critical things that we thought are necessary to develop individual agency. Then we have community capacity building labs, which are composed out of the narrative and cultural awareness, simulation and debate, and conflict resolution. These are meant to be, it's still designed to help individuals, but as individuals working inside the community. And state response, which is obviously directed at policymakers. I'm not going to go to the to explain every single lab. I'm just going to take 1 or 2 examples. For example, the narrative and cultural awareness lab is aimed at making people aware of the different narratives, so stories that circulate in society about a certain group. So basically, the things that we think about ourselves. So how do migrants look? How do they think? Not real facts, but the stories and how these stories lead to a certain behavior. And we need to understand that the stories are not always true and learn ways in which to challenge them. For example, critical thinking also does not require much explanation. We read a lot of news, but for example, we need to learn how to process the information and through our own filter and make sure that we are always critical at what we are being told, and we have so that we can distinguish what is true from what is, for example, fake news. Each laboratory is combined of exercises that do 2 things. One, they teach you how to map a problem. So first, identify the problem, and then they teach you various strategies on how to solve the problem that was identified. And what have we done so far? As I explained, we did create a group of relevant stakeholders in Malta who have worked with us, both by sharing their experiences and then also were involved in testing the various exercises, telling us what works, what doesn't work, what should be improved. So we created this pool of human resources. We collected their insights, and now we have really, I think, a good understanding of how people think about these issues. And they gave us a lot of very good examples of cases that never reached the media, but that are clear examples of polarization and, unfortunately, in some cases also of radicalization. We have worked with them together to design the content of these exercises, and here is the stage that we are in the sense that we still have exercises that we need to test, and unfortunately COVID stopped that, but we are hoping to once the school starts and everything to go back to the testing of exercises with different educators and other practitioners. And then we have also worked on some national guidelines for addressing the issue of radicalization and polarization in schools. So what should be done if somebody notices that a child is vulnerable or has already moved on this path? So what should be the procedure? If there is reporting, who should report to whom, who should address it, who should try to tackle the problem. So we have also worked with other colleagues on developing these guidelines, which we believe are very necessary.